Good morning. This is Joe with Life Made Simple. I want to share with you something that's very, very trying in my life at the time and has been one of those things that I've had to learn to process in my life. As you know, that grew up with very dysfunctional childhood. There was me, my sister, and my two younger brothers. So Richard was my youngest brother, and by the time I left home at 16, he was only, what, about 3, 4 years old. So I never really lived in a house. I babysat him for the first 3 years of his life. Um, that was my job. But when my mother remarried and realized that it's not going to work, he was not, the new husband was not protective of us children. Uh, against my mother, and he just basically I learned what it all is now. The flying monkey, the one that comes in and protects the narcissist, that sort of thing. So, but we're not going to get into a lot of that. I just want to tell you the story about my brother. Um, he, my brother, he was amazing. So at the time I was getting into real estate in my let's see, late 20s, early 30s. He was graduating high school because there's about what 12, yeah, about 12 years difference. He quit school, but he decided to go back and finish, and I was proud of him for that. He got out there and started trying to do sales jobs, and this guy even sold vacuum cleaners. And I thought to myself, who would buy a vacuum cleaner? And he actually did pretty good in it. He was such a people person. So things rock on, and next thing I know, he's in one venture after the other, and he's always got things going. But I noticed now, looking back, he never really came around much to the family end of it. My father and him lived out in Alabama and out of in a college town, and he wound up opening a bar out there in the college town called the Library, and his theme was just tell your parents you're at the library, or his slogan. I thought that was ingenious. He was even in several of the magazines about the way he made drinks. So he got into the bar scene. I believe he worked in restaurants and cleaning tables and doing all kinds of stuff until my father actually helped him get this bar. At this time, I'm still oblivious because I'm just trying to get my own life in order, trying to figure my own life out. So what I didn't realize is that my brother had become a very heavy drinker. Didn't realize that he was dating people much like myself, very abusive to us. The codependent, narcissistic type relationship. My brother had a beautiful heart. I can't say enough about what a good soul he was. Did things that I didn't agree with, but um, looking back, I see where all that came from. So it was the day that my brother was supposed to. Well, let me go back. So he'd been out over in he wound up having the bar, sold it later, then went to the Virgin Islands and was, I think, working as a bartender out there. So he'd been out there, I think, 6 months to a year, and not sure the details of it, but he was going to come home for his 30th birthday. So he flies in about 10 days before. I was out doing my work. I come in excited. Everybody's at my house, and he comes in, and I look at him, and I'm so excited to see him, and I look at him, and he's yellowish. His whole skin is yellow, and I'm like, okay, are you feeling okay? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I noticed his skin and all just looked kind of oily, and his hair, and just something was not right. His energy was way off, is what I realize now. And I went out, and my father was just in there watching TV, and I went into him. I'm like, "Did you see Richard?" "Yeah, but he says he's okay." And I'm like, "No, no, no. You need to get him to a doctor. Something is not right. You need to get him to a doctor and get him there now." So I look back, and this whole family environment that I grew up in was just, it's like, you ever felt like you just were born into a family and you're like, who are these people? Why why do they behave the way they do? But anyway, getting back to the story, my father, he winds up going and taking him up to the little clinic up the street. And so that evening or the next day I come in, I said, well, you took him to the doctor? He says, yeah. He said, they're running blood tests on him now. They'll be back next week. Next week, you need to get some answers now because that is not a good thing. I kid you not. I looked at him. I said, you need to take him to the emergency room and have his blood work done to where they can get it back like very quickly and find out what's going on. And he hauled around and then he said, and I'll never forget it. He's like, but he doesn't have insurance. My parents have always put a dollar value on their children. I just about came loose on him. I'm like, either you take him or I'm taking him because he's going to the hospital. My the the cost of it never even crossed my mind, but that was the first thing that my father thought of. How much is it going to cost? Not if something's wrong with my son, my child. And see, all looking back, all this is so crystal clear now. So he finally, I made him get him in the truck and make sure that they went to the hospital. So a few hours later, he calls me. I says, they got him in there and all? They said, yeah, yeah. He said, they're going to have some tests back soon. Good. Call me when you find out. He calls me back a little while later and says, you need to get up here. I said, why? He said, come on up here. I got up there. I don't even remember driving up there. I knew something was wrong. He, at this point, the doctor came in and said that his liver was in total shutdown and his kidneys only 5% was functioning. My first thought is I looked at the doctor and says, what can we do? And he looked at me like shocked because in my mind, I'm like, he's 29 years old. We just fix him. And, you know, he says, nobody's talked to you about the situation before me? I said, no. And I knew then it wasn't good. So what happened was somebody else came in and they said, the only thing we can do is put him in hospice and make him comfortable. I did not, they said since he is an alcoholic, they wouldn't even consider an organ transplant, and the fact that it was such bad shape probably wouldn't have done much good anyway. And in fact, I guess he didn't have insurance, they're not even going to try. So they put him in hospice, and he couldn't really talk at that point. I guess they had given him morphine and some other stuff. And I'd been up to the hospital several times, and I would finally come to peace with it. And I went over and whispered in his ear, I love you, buddy. It's okay. You can go see grandmother now. My grandmother had passed away just 5 years earlier. They were very close. And I said, "You can go see her now." And I'd been at the hospital. I was so exhausted. And I said, I said that I'll be back in the morning. I said, I need to get a night's sleep. I said, call me if anything happens. I barely got out of the parking lot and he had passed away. He knew, I felt like he knew it was okay to leave. Um, he died 3 days before his 30th birthday, which I think was a Thursday. Yep, because Sunday, which was a good day for everybody to come and see him and his, and have a funeral. 3 days. And it just so happens it fell on a Sunday, and so we had his funeral on his 30th birthday. Rather than celebrating his birthday, we were sitting there at his funeral, and it didn't make sense to me. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Fast forward, it's been almost 15 years. Oh, it's been over 15 years. Is that right? Wow, time has gone by. Yeah, going on 16. And the sad thing about it, somebody's pulling up. Sad thing about it is that people around here are just friendly. They woke up. Um, Sad thing about it is my parents don't even put flowers on his grave. I got a buddy coming up, so I'm gonna catch you on the next one. This is Joe Cox, Joe Cox Live. Joe Cox, blessings. What you up to?